I am not happy all the time, nor have I been very productive over the past 2 years. And for quite some time, I haven't made any progress in getting closer to any of my life goals. In fact, I don't even know what my life goals are anymore. Sometimes it feels like my whole life is just turning upside down and it's a house of cards built on a foundation of past achievements ready to collapse at any moment. Based on all the messages and questions and comments that I get on social media, I sometimes think that many of you have this very wrong impression that I'm always happy, traveling, and productive, that I can buy anything I want to, get any job I desire, or date whoever I want to. And objectively speaking, my life is generally good. And this is not going to be a video about me crying over some minor issues. Instead, I want to focus on this wrong image that social media created of me, which to a large extent is my own fault. I'm human too, and I experience all sorts of different feelings. And I'm not a very emotional person, so you will likely never see me cry on camera or burst into happiness. But I find it very difficult in general to talk about my feelings, not just here on camera, but even with my best friends, with my family, and even romantic partners. For those of you who are new to my channel, I'm a third-year PhD candidate. This looks like I'm trying to rap here. I'm a third-year PhD candidate at MIT. I work on artificial intelligence and on quantum computing. And I grew up in Croatia, where I started my undergraduate studies in theoretical physics, and later completed my master's degree at EPFL in Switzerland and at Harvard University. About 2 years ago, I started a startup called Assisto, which is currently active with about 25 full-time employees. But I'm no longer involved in any day-to-day operations. I started being on the internet about 18 months ago, first on my friend's podcast channel, a video that went viral all over Germany, and about 12 months ago also with my own YouTube channel. And YouTube has been an amazing journey, but it also feels a bit like it's the only real success that I've had in the last 12 months. And also, since about 6 months ago, my views have started to steadily decline, and it could really be that this is about to end my channel. Also, I'm not even sure what my channel should be about, so I just keep exploring different areas and different topics, and I cannot really pick a good niche. Apart from this, I completely lost hope for my PhD research field, which is quantum computing, to go anywhere. About 1 year ago, I made a very enthusiastic video talking about quantum artificial intelligence and how exciting it is, and I'm still excited about it, but some recent results have shown that most likely this field isn't going anywhere, and quantum computing isn't going to become a reality anytime soon. And even if it wasn't for this problem, I just generally lost interest in doing research. Sometimes I feel like I wasted the past 10 years of my life studying mostly theoretical physics and learning things that I will just never be able to apply anywhere. And now I'm stuck halfway in a 6-year PhD program in which I made very little progress just because I'm not very motivated and not very passionate about what I'm doing. Every day when I go to my office at MIT to read research papers and work on my research, I think I spend about 80% of my time just daydreaming and procrastinating. It's not that I don't want to work, it's just that it's very hard to focus when you're not motivated about something. And this is kind of embarrassing for me to admit, given that I'm usually seen as this productivity guru, and everybody keeps asking me when I'm going to release a video about productivity. But the truth is, I'm really just super productive when I'm also passionate about something, when I have a clear end goal in mind. Also, since I made a mistake of focusing on theoretical physics as opposed to computational physics, I didn't really gain any practical coding skills, so I'm not really able to easily transition into a software engineering position or maybe work for a finance company as a quant. In some way, I'm just too old and experienced to join as a junior software engineer, but at the same time also too young and inexperienced to join as a manager. I know I could learn how to code, but the thing is, this is something that I could have done much better 10 years ago. And now I simply lack the motivation and the energy to compete with 17-year-olds who, in the end of the day, probably would do a better job at it than me anyways. I know that being 27 years old and doing a PhD at MIT doesn't sound bad at all, and objectively it isn't, but for someone who is just used to always being excellent and productive and motivated and on top of everything, it just feels like I'm getting older and older every day without any concrete skills or career to show. And even my own startup, despite being financially stable and doing well, isn't really going to make me a lot of money in the near future for just reasons that I cannot really disclose publicly. What I really want to do in my life is start a tech startup. This is something I'm very passionate about, but so far I haven't really found a concrete idea nor a co-founder to do this with. And the more time I invest into startups, the less time I invest into my PhD and the higher my risk of losing my PhD and losing all of my funding. Okay, I'm almost done complaining about my objectively speaking good life, I promise. Everything I said so far was career related, so let me spend some time talking about friendships, happiness, and loneliness. As you may know, I've been traveling around the world for the past decade doing different research projects, internships, and studies. And this sounds very fun, and Frankly speaking, it is. But the problem is when you move around so much, it's very hard to form some meaningful relationships and friendships. If you move somewhere knowing that you're soon going to leave, there's no real incentive to invest your time and energy into forming meaningful friendships. After all, once you leave, it's very hard to maintain them at a distance, and often it won't work out. And as I was always busy and surrounded by so many people, I never really thought about this as a real problem. But there was one moment when I realized how bad it actually was. When I moved back to the US in early 2021 to start my PhD at MIT, I didn't really know anyone living here. And I didn't really have the chance to meet anyone face to face given that it was still a pandemic and everything was happening virtually. In the first 3 weeks in the US, I didn't see a human being face to face other than the cashier in the supermarket. And one day when I got food poisoning, I was lying in bed with really high fever, and I realized that there was just nobody to look after me. And at that moment, I think if I had died, probably nobody would have realized or thought about it for at least a week. I'm generally a very positive and happy person, but this was the first time in my life that I experienced suicidal thoughts. A few months later, in-person classes and research resumed, and also I moved to a new apartment surrounded with roommates, which kind of fixed the problem for me. But it did make me realize that over the years, I just failed to build and maintain strong relationships. And this may not be a big problem while I'm doing fine, living with great roommates and doing my PhD at MIT where I meet constantly new people all the time. But in a few years, I won't be living with my roommates anymore. And also, I won't be at university where I constantly meet new people every single day. A few years from now, many of my friends will be living in different cities, different countries, they'll have their own families and their own lives. And this is also why we tend to get lonelier and lonelier as we grow older. And loneliness is a real problem, and we tend to not realize it until it's already too late. In the UK, the government even formed a commission of loneliness, something that many people made fun of. Then this may be the most bureaucratic solution possible to such a problem, but I do have a real point here. Good friendships are usually formed while you're young. Most of them even happen while you're in high school or college maybe. And they don't just happen. You have to actively and proactively invest into them. It's the same thing as with romantic relationships. In my case, this may be especially true, given that most of my friends who currently live with me here in Cambridge, they'll be scattered all around the globe a few years from now. The Harvard study of adult development is the longest lasting study on happiness ever conducted. It launched in 1938 and it's still going on, and they were closely monitoring the lives of 700 teenagers. 256 of the participants were Harvard College students. John F. Kennedy, the former US president, may be the most notable one of them. And 456 were teenagers from some disadvantaged backgrounds from very poor Boston neighborhoods. Around 50 of them are still alive and they're actively participating in the study, which is still going on. They're all now over 90 years old. There have been many lessons and many conclusions drawn from the study, but the most important one is that the quality of relationships throughout a person's life are the most important factor in determining that person's happiness and overall life satisfaction. Factors such as money and physical health are obviously also very important, but loneliness turned out to be the most severe factor that can negatively impact a human. And loneliness is something that you can experience even in a crowd of people or maybe even in an unhappy relationship. Lastly, I want to talk about the future. I personally have to make a very important decision which involves a lot of risk taking. And this is the type of decision which you will very likely also have to make at some point in your life. In order to work towards finishing my PhD, I will have to prepare for my qualifying exams at MIT. But the problem is that in order to prepare for these exams, I would have to invest so much time and energy into them that it wouldn't really allow me to invest my time into startups, nor would I have time to take classes at Harvard's and MIT's business school. The problem is that I currently just lack the motivation and passion for my PhD, and therefore I will never be as good as my colleagues who are actually passionate about what they're doing. And therefore, I will be wasting a lot of valuable time and will never really be productive while working towards my PhD. On the other hand, getting admitted to a PhD program at MIT is something I've been dreaming about and working for day and night for over 10 years. And therefore, it would be really sad to give it up. Nevertheless, I believe that the worst kind of degree is the one where you don't feel like you're making progress as a person. The goal should always be that at the end of every year, you can look back and you can say, I'm now a better person than before. I have more skills, more knowledge, and better relationships. If your job or a degree doesn't really provide you with that feeling, it is most likely a waste of time. It doesn't have to be fun at all times, but at least you have to feel like you're growing and becoming a better person at all points because of what you're doing. I'm not suggesting that you should quit your job or quit your degree at the first sign of not liking it, but you should always ask yourself, will what I'm currently doing lead me in the direction that I want to take? You should never quit something just because you don't feel like doing it. You should only ever consider quitting something if it is stopping you from doing something else which would allow you to grow even more as a person, become a better version of yourself at the end of every single year. There are 3 key takeaways of this video. First of all, Every seemingly successful person on the internet has their own struggles and difficulties, and this very much applies to me too. So keep that in mind next time I post a fun Instagram story of a random trip. Secondly, invest into quality friendships and relationships. I know this may not seem super urgent right now, but these may be the last years in which it is very easy to form good friendships. It will only get more difficult as you get older. And remember, your overall life happiness and satisfaction, as well as your mental and physical health, depend on it. The third and final takeaway of this video is make sure that whatever hobby, career, or degree you choose, that it always leads you on a path where you can consistently make progress and consistently become a better version of yourself. Earlier in this video, I talked about how important it is to possess certain practical skills, such as coding, because they will make it much easier in your professional life. And if you learned something new from this video, you can thank me by giving me a thumbs up, subscribing to my channel, and turning on the notifications. You can check out my video about my life principles for success over here, as well as my day in a life at MIT video over here. As always, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Take care.